Hello, and welcome to an exclusive Ask Me Anything about RuneScape's upcoming boss, Amascut. Over the past week, I've scoured the internet for your most pressing questions, and in this video, I'll be answering them to the very best of my ability. But we have to be careful, because if I share too much, it might get cut by production, and nobody wants that. Amascut comes out on August 4th, with the world's first race beginning at 1:30 BST or 8:30 Eastern. You can follow the action live from the RuneScape Twitch channel, or take part in-game at what many are calling the most ambitious RuneScape 3 boss in recent history. But without further ado, let's get to those burning questions. The first question comes from Edemies, who's asked two things. First, are there rewards for kill count like Nakatra? What about hard mode kill count aura, armor set, or a weapon skin? And to answer your question, there are not one, but two unique auras relating to Amascut. For starters, there's a gold aura for those who complete Amascut at the world's first race difficulty, which is 2000% during the first week. And then after that first week, anyone who completes 2000% in Rage Amascut will receive a green aura. And I don't know if I'm gonna have permission to show them, but if I do have permission, they're gonna show up on screen right now. The next question comes from Mod Ramen, and he asked, what is that? I'm not doing this today. I am not doing this. I'm sorry. I'm just not doing this, bro. There's no way. The next question comes from Salty, and they're asking, are the weapon drops exclusive only to the hardest difficulty? And to answer your question, I'm gonna give you a little bit of information about how the drops work at Amascut. In addition to normal mode, which is the easiest and most accessible difficulty, there are also 5 different thresholds of enrages that anyone will be able to select on launch. As you move up these enrage modes, you'll get a more difficult boss fight, but you'll also get an increased chance at receiving unique drops. But in terms of the weapon drops specifically, they will be available from each of the 5 enrage modes, but not from normal mode. Okay, I need to issue a correction. That I just said there was a complete lie. You actually can get both of the weapon drops from normal mode, although they will be considerably more rare from normal mode than they would be in any of the enrage modes. Oh, and while I'm standing here, one other thing. There is a singular drop that is completely unique to hard mode, although I'm not allowed to tell you what it is. Okay, let's get back to the video. The next question comes from 10 Cents, and they're asking, do defensive abilities work? Like, are they nullified on hit, or are they weakened like at Zamorak? I don't want to say too much here, but to answer your question, yes, there will be modifiers in place that will impact some of your defensive abilities for some of Amascut's mechanics. The next couple questions come from Jaws. Their first question is, are Amascut's mechanics heavily movement-based like hard mode Sanctum of Rebirth? To me, I don't think they're quite as movement-based as something like hard mode Sanctum of Rebirth. There's definitely a lot of movement involved in the boss fight, but I wouldn't say quite as much as hard mode Nakatra. The next question also comes from the Jaws, and it reads, compared to other bosses, how difficult is the day 1 world's first mode of Amascut? It is extremely hard. Based on my testing and based on my experience, it is more difficult than any other kind of standard form boss fight in the game. It is crazy. It is going to be a ton of fun. I'm very excited to watch people compete and try to complete it, but this is not an easy boss, and I do not see it going down very quickly. In playtesting the Amascut boss, and as a qualifier for what I'm about to say, generally speaking, when you're playtesting something, it isn't complete, so mechanics are still being figured out, and it isn't exactly a fully fledged boss fight. But in the roughly 8 hours of playtesting I was able to do at Amascut, I want to say there was probably a death on average from someone in the group, I want to say every minute or so, and a good chunk of those were mine. So if that gives you any idea on the difficulty expectation, it's hard. One final question from Jaws, is the boss fun? And in my experience, I had an absolute blast attempting to take her on with my group in playtesting, and I'm so excited for Amascut to come out in game. It's so unlike every other boss in RuneScape, and I think it's a perfect fit into the game. The next question comes from Andrew, who asks, can you fight Amascut with any style, or is there one that seems to be easier to use over the others? That's a very good question, and I think if I answer this too well, I might be giving out a little more information than I'll be allowed to. But I will say that I would expect certain combat styles, like at most bosses, to come out on top of the others. But at the same time, especially if you're doing the lower enrage brackets or the normal mode, you should be able to get by with just about whatever style you'd like to bring. With that said, in my playtesting, there was one style that was used a little bit more than the other ones, and I'm very curious to see if that ends up becoming the meta once the boss is released. The next question comes from Lord Oi Nathan, who's asked, how have Ramen and the team solved Cade/Devotion intercepting? Let's just say there have been some learnings from previous boss encounters like Zamorak, and I would not expect. Our next question comes from Zarandi, who asks, is it a necromancy only boss? And to answer your question, no, it is not. In the playtesting I did, I played with all 4 combat styles, and the style that I had the most fun with, and I think I will be planning on using on launch, is not necromancy. Like anything, depending on how much healing you need, how much damage you want to mitigate, or a number of other boss-specific factors, you may want to choose one style over another one, but I wouldn't say that necromancy is specifically favored at Amascut. Our next question comes from Thomas, who asks, what makes the fight challenging, especially compared to something like hard mode Nakatra? To me, the thing that sets Amascut apart from a lot of other bosses in RuneScape is the group aspect of it. This isn't a group boss that also scales down to solo, it's a group boss, and you'll see that very quickly in the mechanics, where at times there will be opportunities for certain players in a group to have to take a defined role where they have to complete certain actions to progress the fight. But at the same time, there are a lot of moments in this boss encounter where you have to work together with your teammates in order to keep going further into the fight. It's extremely special, it's extremely unique, and to me, that is what sets Amascut apart from a lot of other bosses in RuneScape. In my experience, there's not a lot of brute forcing here, and there are a ton of group mechanics that you just wouldn't see in a solo fight. Our next question comes from Charlie, who asks, is there an extra action button? I believe there isn't an extra action button in the fight, although that doesn't mean that there won't be some form of transportation to different areas and different planes. It just might not be a button on your screen. The next question comes from Cravey, who asks, how accessible is the boss in terms of telegraphing, things like voice cues and visual cues? I think the telegraphing is really solid, and it follows up nicely from the Sanctum of Rebirth in terms of showing you icons on the ground when certain mechanics are about to happen. But on top of having ground floor telegraphing, the Amascut boss fight is also fully voiced, and that's a really nice additional layer of indication. And there's also a brand new system that I can't tell you too much about that also may indicate certain incoming attacks that will be player specific and occur on your screen. The next question comes from Cravey, who asks, how many phases or how far did you get into the boss fight? And unfortunately, for people expecting this boss fight to be easy, those are different answers. I don't think I'm allowed to tell you how many phases are in the boss fight, and the answer might even depend. Although for me personally, I believe the furthest I made it into the boss fight was phase 5. Is that the last phase? Is that the end of the fight? You'll have to find out on release. Our next question comes from Robert, who asks, does the soundtrack bang? And thanks to some incredible work for our friend Cole Rowland, the Amascut soundtrack is absolutely sick, and I cannot wait for you to hear it on August 4th. It's so good. It's incredible. Our next question comes from Cardio, who asks, does all of the fight take place in the same arena with phases being within it, like Solak or Yakamaru, or does it move around like Virago and Telos? I would say more the latter, a little more similar to Virago Telos, where although there is a main area that you'll be for the majority of the fight, you also do a good amount of traveling to, let's just say, some different places. The next question also comes from Cardio, who asks, is Amascut the only thing that needs killing within the fight? No. Our next question comes from Stormy. Simple yes or no, will this be RuneScape's hardest boss? And although I was going to elaborate, considering you've asked me for a simple yes or no, I'm just going to say yes and move on to the next question. The next question comes from Jay on Discord, who asked, can the Reaper Crew achievement be unlocked via normal mode? And yes, I can confirm that you'll be able to unlock Reaper Crew by taking out Amascut in normal mode. Gotikfish on Discord asks, what will the defense level be? I.e., can you reasonably expect to hit 100% on every style without Berserker Aura buffs? I don't want to say too much here, but Amascut is. Our next question comes from Moxie on Discord, who asked, is the boss soloable? I don't believe the Amascut boss fight will be soloable, because certain mechanics in the fight require multiple people doing different coordinated things in order to progress further on. With that said, if I were to guess what the lowest team size able to take on Amascut would be, I think you'd be able to take it out in a group of 2. Although if you can get together a group of 5, that will be better. Batsy on Discord asks, how would you say normal mode and challenge mode compare to existing bosses? While Amascut is an endgame boss, the normal mode is designed to be relatively accessible. This is very much in my personal opinion, just with what I've seen up to this point, but to me, if you've completed either hard or elite combat mastery achievements, you should be able to take on normal mode Amascut, of course, with practice and anything else you'll need to learn a brand new boss. As for challenge mode, I'm having trouble comparing it to any of the bosses in the game because it feels so different from a lot of the other encounters we have. But a lot of the examples that have previously been given, like High Enraged Zamorak, definitely hold true and make sense. But still, I don't think there's any perfect comparison, so I'm gonna pass on that. Yelpsy on Discord asks, will we get a certain glow around the character when we get a signature drop? And to answer your question, yes. There will be a glow around your character when approaching the loot chest if you have a unique in there. Pink Roses on Discord asks, are there any added mechanics once you hit a certain enrage, like Telos Phase 5, Zamorak P7, etc., or maybe something completely new after 4K? This is a tough one because there's so much I want to say about this question, but I know if I give more than a one-word answer, it's gonna get cut, so I'm just gonna say yes. The next question from Pink Roses is, how is loot rolled? Is there a loot chest? Does everyone get their own loot, or is it Virago style? At Amascut, every player will get loot, so it'll be rolled one drop per person, similar to a boss like Zamorak. This next question comes from Joshua B, who asks, what are some combat achievements I should complete ahead of time to feel somewhat ready to tackle this fight? And I think that's an awesome question. For the normal mode boss fight, I would say some kind of sprinkling in between hard and elite combat achievements in general, and you should be in a place where with some practice and some learning, you may find yourself more or less equipped to take on normal mode. But when we're talking about the highest difficulty, to me, based on my experience of getting blasted repeatedly week after week after week, I'm gonna say some kind of sprinkling between a lot of elite done, some of master done, and some of grandmaster done. It's hard for me to give a specific combat mastery achievement that is preparatory for Amascut because it's such a different boss fight from most of the boss fights we have in the game. The next question comes from Pup, who asks, does the boss HP scale with team size? And as far as I know, the answer to that question is no. Similar to a boss like Angel of Death, the boss is the boss, and regardless of how many players you arrive in the boss encounter with, Amascut is going to have the same amount of life points. And last but not least, the final question for this AMA from Pup is, will there be combat achievements on release? No, there will not be combat achievements on release, although the plan is to add them about a month after launch. Okay, that's all the time I have for answering those pressing Amascut questions, and hopefully with these answers you feel just a little bit more prepared for the boss launch on August 4th. I look forward to seeing all of you at the world's first race. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you again very soon.